Hello everyone and welcome to my next WrestleMania rebooking video. Of course, I usually do these on Sundays. If you haven't noticed, today's Monday. I completely forgot yesterday was Sunday. I'm just not used to having 2 days off from work. So yeah, excuse me. I really thought yesterday was Saturday. Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna continue on with our WrestleMania rebookings. This week we are going with WrestleMania 31 from 2015, and like I said, we are now pretty much on a live thing. I guess you can say it real time booking because this is from like 31 and on. I pretty much like booked these as they were, on the road to WrestleMania that year. WrestleMania 31, I want to say I probably fantasy booked it maybe I want to say in January, which is when I usually start doing these fantasy bookings. So, and just to see what pretty much what differences we got between what we got and what I would have done. So yeah, WrestleMania 31 from SoFi Stadium, excuse me, Levi Stadium in California. Um, Pretty good WrestleMania. Um, of course, I feel like outdoor um any so WrestleMania or SummerSlam, I feel like outdoor events just hit different. And of course, especially for WrestleMania when they have them outdoor, I think the only downfall from that for this show was that it didn't get dark out until like the show was practically ending. And like I said, outdoor WrestleManias hit different, especially when once it starts getting dark and you see like the sun go down and it gets night out, and then like all the pyro on the lighting just makes it feel like so much vibrant and more, unique, and everything just feels more extravagant. Unfortunately, like I said, it didn't get dark out until like the show was pretty much halfway through the main event when it finally started to get dark out. So, but that didn't really take away from this being a pretty good WrestleMania. I don't think there's really too much anything bad about it. Um, yeah, so it's a really good one. So with that being said, let's go ahead and see what the WWE gave us that year for WrestleMania 31, or as some people were calling it, WrestleMania Play Button, because they didn't have the numbers on there. This is when around the time when Vince McMahon said he didn't want to use numbers for WrestleMania because it's making it feel old. Bruh. Anyway, so starting off on the pre-show, we had a fatal four-way for the tag team championships. It was Cesaro and Tyson Kidd defending against the New Day, the Usos, and Los Matadores, I think it was. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was. So yeah, this is around when this is just a few months after the New Day pretty much formed. Cesaro and Tyson Kidd at the time were like one of those random tag teams that were getting thrown out together as a tag team during this time. They did actually pretty well together. Um, and in the end, pretty much Cesaro and Tyson Kidd retained the tag team titles against other teams. After that, we had the Andre the Giant Battle Royal. This is pretty much, like I said the year before, was probably the only important Andre the Giant Battle Royal. This one was pretty much on the pre-show, and it pretty much let you know where their thoughts were on that. The match was won by the Big Show. Um, yeah, it's 2015. Anyway, on the going on to the main show, they actually kicked off with my personal favorite, a multi-man ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship. It was Wade Barrett defending against Daniel Bryan, Dolph Ziggler, Stardust, Luke Harper, R-Truth, and Dean Ambrose. The names on paper sound pretty good. Of course, the only one that probably kind of stood out was R-Truth, which surprisingly he was actually involved in the Intercontinental title scene at this time. And I remember the storyline going into this match. They were like pretty. All these guys were pretty much like stealing the title from each other and like keeping a hostage or whatever the case was until finally they all culminated in the ladder match. Some of these names on paper would make it seem like it's a five-star ladder match. You got Daniel Bryan, Wade Barrett, Dolph Ziggler, Dean Ambrose, and then Stardust, of course, as you know, is Cody Rhodes, who could, and then you got Luke Harper, who could go for a big man. And then you got R-Truth, and pretty much to standard ladder match. It was won by Daniel Bryan, and they made a point of referencing how WrestleMania the year before ended with the Yes, and then WrestleMania 31 started off with the whole Yes thing. So this would also be Daniel Bryan's last WrestleMania for about 3 years when he was forced into retirement because of his neck. A lot of people thought that this would pretty much be like the end of his career. We were wrong. And obviously, in about 3 more years, we found out he was able to clear and get back into the ring. Up next, we had Randy Orton versus Seth Rollins. This was pretty much when Randy Orton pretty much left the Authority. Seth Rollins took him out with an injury, and he came back, I think, at Fastlane the month prior, if I remember correctly. This, of course, naturally led to the blow off between Randy Orton and Seth Rollins. Randy Orton wins the match with one of the best looking RKOs that I've ever seen. If you haven't seen it, YouTube it or just go watch the match. Yeah, it was amazing. Up next was Sting versus Triple H, which was basically a no disqualification match. They just didn't say it. They said the only way to win is by pinfall. You should have just said there's no disqualification, but it probably would have made a lot more sense. But there's like so much that went wrong and so much that went good with this. I mean, this was right after Sting had finally made his WWE debut a couple months prior at Survivor Series, and they pretty much let it build up to WrestleMania. Of course, a lot of people would have rather had Sting face The Undertaker, of course, but we didn't get that, unfortunately. Instead, we got Triple H defending the honor of WWE against Sting and WCW, I'm guessing, even though WCW died, like over 10 years before this in 2001. This was 2015. WCW had been dead for like 15 years by then. I love Triple H. He's one of my personal favorites, but I think that wasn't the way to go with this. We didn't need WWE versus WCW again, 15 years after WCW was already out of business already. Um, Pretty much what you would expect from two guys, obviously way past their prime with all the bells and whistles. And then you had a whole mini DX versus NWO, which of course the wrestling purists were nitpicking at because why the hell was the NWO helping Sting when Sting was always facing off against the NWO and WCW? Logic. But I guess they pretty much wanted to get that whole DX versus NWO thing out the way again, probably 10, 20 years past the sell date, which would have been a lot better to see. But yeah, it was pretty much a bunch of old senior guys coming down, wobbling down, and beating the crap out of each other, which would have made it unintentionally hilarious. Um, yeah, if they had done that maybe like in 99 or 2000, it probably would have been like 10 times better. But this was 2015. It that at least the nostalgia part of it was good to see, but from a wrestling perspective, it probably was not the best way to go. Triple H, of course, had one of his, over the top entrances, which I don't mind because, like I said, Triple H is one of my favorites. Sting had his own little unique entrance, which probably didn't really fit him. Like I didn't really get how it connected to Sting. But in the end, Triple H won. Should he have won? Me personally, I would have said no. Even though, like I say, he's my favorite. But I would have had Sting, who came in and at the Survivor Series and helped defeat the Authority. I think it would have been nice for him to actually get the win on his first and sadly only WrestleMania he competed in. But they had to give Triple H the win to finally, once again, dig WCW into a hole. Again, 15 years past its expiration date already. What can you say? Up next, we had a women's tag team match. Paige and AJ Lee versus the Bella Twins. Of course, all four of these are some of my all-time favorites. This will also be AJ Lee's last WrestleMania before she retired until this year, which is pretty much, 11 years already? 11 years later. This was pretty much getting to the start of the women's revolution because it was around this time where they were finally starting to give the women a little bit more in-ring time, and it wouldn't be until the following year, which the women's revolution pretty much kicked into full gear. If you know, you know. But at least we didn't get like something stupid like a bra and panties match or a pillow fight or some dumb shit. We actually had two of the best, and then the Bella Twins. In my personal opinion, I feel like they can go I don't think they're the best, but I don't think they're the worst. I mean, like I said, this is biasy because they're four of my favorites, so sue me. Of course, Paige and AJ got the win because they're the babyface team. AJ Lee retires the next night on Raw, and I think Nikki Bella started a feud with Naomi, who turned heel like right after, if I remember correctly. That, of course, would lead to the formation of Team Bellas. Paige would get Charlotte and Becky Lynch on her team, and Naomi would join up with Tamina and my all-time favorite, Sasha Banks. But that's, not WrestleMania. Up next was the United States Championship. Rusev, who came out on a tank, defending against John Cena. This is around when Rusev was pretty much an unstoppable monster after being debuting the following year. And then he pretty much took down all challengers who came for his United States title, and it only made obvious sense for John Cena to be the one to bring him down and take back his United States title. Obviously, John Cena won because this is around the time when the whole John Cena wins LOL thing going on. So, yeah. Up next, we had Bray Wyatt versus The Undertaker, which could have been a passing of the torch, but Undertaker won, pretty much getting back his win after losing the streak the year prior. We hadn't seen him since then, and seeing him at this show, of course, he looked a lot more fitter. He looked a lot more healthier and bigger and stronger compared to how, I guess, weak he looked the year before. Um, Again, it was also just funny just to see the Undertaker make his entrance in broad daylight. Um, yeah, but like I said, you can't control the weather. They had the WrestleMania on the West Coast, so obviously it's going to get darker a lot later. But they tried stalling with the whole Triple H and Stephanie and Rock and Ronda Rousey theme. They tried, I guess, stalling to get it dark out, but it didn't get dark out as quickly as they hoped. So we had to watch Undertaker and Bray Wyatt make their entrances in broad daylight, which is a pretty funny sight to see. There was also rumors that we probably wouldn't even get the match because earlier that day they had said that Bray Wyatt had messed up his ankle. So now the match was in jeopardy because we wouldn't know if Bray Wyatt would be cleared to compete that night. He obviously was, and they had a pretty decent match, not the best Undertaker match at WrestleMania, but we got for what it was. They could have done a passing of the torch to Bray Wyatt, but Undertaker pretty much, I guess they felt he had to get his win back from losing the streak the following year. So this, of course, Undertaker and Bray Wyatt, they continued their feud at the end of the year um, with a tag team match at Survivor Series. But it's pretty much set up Undertaker to get his win back and then start another feud with Brock Lesnar in the summertime that year. And then, of course, the main event, which was the WWE Championship, Brock Lesnar defending against Roman Reigns. If you know about this match, you know that pretty much towards the ending, it became a triple threat match because this is when Seth Rollins had the heist of the century and decided to cash in Money on the Bank contract for the first time at a WrestleMania. Of course, this is around the time when people were just like booing the shit out of Roman Reigns because they didn't want him at the top. They still wanted Daniel Bryan. Um, they still wanted him to be the guy. Obviously, he wasn't, and then unfortunately, he also had to retire. But at this time, people were like legit like booing the hell out. They did not want Roman Reigns at the top spot. But this match, like everyone thought, okay, it's not gonna be good, but it was actually pretty great because Brock Lesnar was just beating the shit out of Roman Reigns throughout the whole match, and it was a pretty much your two big guys just power moving each other for the whole time that it went. And then both guys were down, and then Seth Rollins comes out, cashes in Money in the Bank. Match becomes a triple threat match, and he hits the stomp on Roman Reigns and becomes the WWE champion, the heist of the century. So yeah, that was also, I guess, a way to send the whole crowd home. I guess you can say kind of happy because they didn't want Roman Reigns to win, so I guess they got somebody else that wasn't Roman Reigns. But yeah, so yeah, it actually felt like it was a pretty short WrestleMania with just 7 matches. But especially none of them were like really really long. I don't think any of them even went past 20 minutes if even that. But hey, what can you do? Maybe if they did, then maybe they could have had an Undertaker entrance when it was dark out. But they didn't. So that of course is what the WWE gave us. Now let's take a look and see what I would have done, how I would have booked WrestleMania 31. Like I said, I started booking this that January, of course. That's when I started. I want to say yes, around January when I started doing this one. So of course, like I said, I don't usually tend to change my bookings depending on what, unless something major, like somebody dies or something. But for the most part, I usually tend to keep to what I booked so I could see what they did change and everything. So I don't really, like I said, if I pick this person to win the Royal Rumble and they pick somebody else, I'm not gonna go and change my whole WrestleMania card. I'm just gonna stick with what I said, if that makes sense. So kicking off on the pre-show, we're gonna keep the Andre the Giant Battle Royal on the pre-show, but I'm gonna give the win to Ryback, who I think was back to being a babyface at this time, and he was probably the biggest baby face that wasn't booked on the main show. Of course, he wasn't as over as he was a couple years before. I really think that that heel turn killed his momentum. And then losing to John Cena every single time that didn't help either. So this would have kind of been a way to kind of build Riot back up, at least if not to a main event star, at least to an upper mid card, since he did win the Intercontinental title a few months later. But yeah, I'll give the win to Ryback. Also, so now we're going on to the main card, and surprisingly, even surprised me, this WrestleMania does not feature my favorite multi-man ladder match, which surprised me when I thought about it. I was like, holy shit. I actually um I actually had to hold myself back and not book a multi-man ladder match because as you know, that's my favorite type of match. And I was just surprised myself when I saw I didn't have that match on here. So I was like, okay. Hmm. So we're gonna kick things off with the Intercontinental title. Wade Barrett defending against Dean Ambrose, but this match would not be one on one. It would be a bare knuckle brawl. Now, because now when that's this is around the time when Wade Barrett he was no longer Bad News Barrett. I believe his gimmick at this time was the bare knuckle brawler or some shit like that. And it just kind of sounds like something he would come up with a bare knuckle brawl, which of course is basically a no disqualification with a fancy name attached to it. And he had already was in the middle of a feud with Dean Ambrose. They fought at Fastlane a month prior, and Wade Barrett won. This could have, of course, continued that feud. No disqualification. I would have given the win to Dean Ambrose and let him walk out of WrestleMania with the Intercontinental title. Up next is a fatal four-way for the tag team championships. It's basically the same match that took place on the pre-show with one minor difference. Cesaro and Tyson Kidd are still the champions. They're still defending against the Usos, the New Day, and instead of Los Matadores, we have The Miz and Damian Sandow. Who, of course, Damian Sandow was over at this time doing the whole stunt double gimmick with The Miz. The crowd wanted to see him, turn against the Miz. He did in the pre-show battle royal. I think they would have saved that for here. Um, they could have had Cesaro and Tyson Kidd still win the titles. Miz could be, talking shit to Damian Sandow. You cost us the match. That would be the straw that breaks the camel's back for Damian Sandow. And that's when he turns against the Miz and goes on a babyface run. There's a WrestleMania moment. Again, sometimes the most obvious choice is the best one. It's like right there. But they didn't. They broke up in the pre-show battle royal. They had like a mini feud for a couple of weeks, and then that was it. Damian Sandow went back to being a jobber, and then got released like a few months later. The Miz still there. Miz is one of my favorites, but yeah. Up next, we have a match that probably could have happened the year before, and they could have done it this year, but they actually chose to do it at Fastlane the month before, and that is Goldust versus Stardust. Pretty much Cody Rhodes versus Goldust. Around this time was when Stardust actually turned on Goldust when they, had their little mini feud, which led to a match at Fastlane. I personally think they should have kept that match for WrestleMania because both guys wanted it. But of course, Vince McMahon, being Vince McMahon, he felt nobody wanted to see two brothers going at it. Like, oh, if they can go and work a good match, let them go and work a good match. Again, sometimes the most obvious answer is the best one. God damn it. So yeah, I would have had Goldust versus Stardust. Of course, I would give the win to Stardust because he was the more younger in his prime. Superstar Goldust, of course, was more obviously the veteran of the match. Of course, it would have been good for him to put his younger brother over on the grandest stage of them all. Up next, we have Seth Rollins versus Randy Orton. We're going to keep the same as we got in real life, the same build up, the same storyline, match result. Seth Rollins still wins, excuse me, Randy Orton still wins with still the best RKO there ever was. Up next, we have Bray Wyatt versus Roman Reigns. I think they really should have done this match at WrestleMania, especially because, like I said, the people were booing the hell out of Roman Reigns. They didn't want him to be the top dog, at least not yet. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he had a feud with Bray Wyatt that summer, or I want to say it was that year, it might have been the year before. No, actually, I think it was this year. They had like a little mini feud. Actually, I think yeah, it was because he had a feud with Bray Wyatt, which led to him teaming with Dean Ambrose against Bray Wyatt, and I think Luke Harper at SummerSlam that year. But I think they should have done that match here instead. It probably it's okay. So Roman Reigns is fighting Bray Wyatt, who's challenging Brock Lesnar for the WWE title. We will get to that right now. But yeah, I really think Bray Wyatt could have faced Roman Reigns here at WrestleMania. They could have kept the same storyline they had a couple months later with Bray Wyatt saying anyone but you, Roman. That's pretty much what I remember he was telling him. So I think yeah, that match would have been perfect for WrestleMania. They didn't go with it. Of course, logically speaking, I would give the win to Roman Reigns. That's a match that probably could either go both ways. Give the win to Roman Reigns because it's WrestleMania. Of course, he's the guy. Or we could have given the win to Bray Wyatt, which could have extended that feud. Like I said, me personally, I like Roman Reigns. I've always been a fan of him. I had no problem against him. I was not one of those people booing him. Cause like I said, I like Roman. I think it was just the thing of the whole them forcing us to boo him. Like you can't force somebody to cheer somebody or boo somebody. I think I just edited my video wrong. What the hell was I doing? I don't know how to re-edit this, so if you heard me sneezing, excuse me. I thought I hit pause. That's awkward. So I don't even remember what the hell I was talking about. Um, I could have sworn I hit pause. I guess I did not. So if you heard me sneezing, excuse me. Um, where did I leave off? If if I didn't hear me, I said yeah, Bray Wyatt and Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns could have won. Skipping that, continuing on. Again, excuse me for sneezing on camera if I didn't pause it on that time. Triple H versus Dolph Ziggler. As I was saying, Dolph Ziggler got the better of the authority at Survivor Series when he was the sole survivor for Team Cena. Of course, thanks and help to Sting. Basically, what they could have done was had Triple H try to hold down Dolph Ziggler the way he did Daniel Bryan the year prior. Um, that, of course, could have led to Dolph Ziggler challenging Triple H to a match at WrestleMania. It could have been added the stipulation of Dolph Ziggler saying if he beats Triple H, he gets a shot at the WWE title or something. I personally don't see Dolph Ziggler beating Triple H at WrestleMania. So not with what I have planned on this show. So I would give the win to Triple H, but with Dolph Ziggler putting up a good fight, I really believe Dolph Ziggler could have done a lot more than what he did. I really feel like they really dropped the ball with him. There are so many times that he was so over that they could have made him, if not the top guy, they could have made him a top guy with at least one or two world title reigns. But they obviously didn't, and which kind of sucks. Like he had all that momentum after Survivor Series, and they just pretty much threw him as another body in the ladder match. So yeah, I would have had Dolph Ziggler at the time getting his biggest WrestleMania match, his first single match at WrestleMania against one of the greatest. So, but again, I would give the win to Triple H because I just don't see Dolph Ziggler beating Triple H at WrestleMania. Up next, we have the United States title, Rusev versus John Cena. Again, we're keeping the same storyline, same build, same match, same result. John Cena still wins. Everybody goes home happy. So, yeah. Again, if I thought I hit pause, I still am not getting the hang of all this editing. So if you heard me having a whole little sneeze episode, I'm sorry. It's the change of the season. My allergies are really messing with me. So yeah, I apologize again for that. So yeah. Up next, we have a fatal four way for the Divas Championship. Instead of the women's tag match, we got that same four participants would be in a fatal four way. So it would be Nikki Bella defending against her sister Brie, Paige, and AJ Lee. Of course, they can do something along the lines of Brie doesn't want to face her sister, but she low key wants the title for herself. There could have been some tension between the Bellas, which would have led to Brie almost costing Nikki the title at WrestleMania. I'm gonna give the win to Nikki Bella still. Let the heels sneak out the victory and everything. So we got, like I said, we got a tag team match, and I feel like all four of these girls could go, especially Paige and AJ could go in the ring. Like I said, the Bellas, I don't think they're the best. I don't think they're the worst. I think they were just good. And I think the four-way between them would have been pretty good. I think I originally, when I first did this, I had it as a six-pack challenge, which also included Naomi and Natalia, but I just finalized it to be in a fatal four-way match. So, yeah. Yes, I know I said I don't really change my bookings after what they book in real life, but so I will change sometimes if I feel okay. Well, because there's a couple of these cards that I had done, like I'll change them and they're like, okay, what do I do with this guy? And I'll like kind of rechange them, but I don't really I don't change them according to what's going on in what they actually book, if it makes sense. Like, I don't know really how to explain it, but you'll see once we get more into what's going on. Up next, we would have had the match that everybody wanted, the fantasy match that everyone wanted since the 90s. We would have gotten Sting versus The Undertaker. Hopefully, by this time, with a couple more matches added to the card, it would have been dark out already. So, Undertaker and Sting could have had, I feel like they could have had just the video packages alone, the entrances would have been amazing to see these two. Of course, it would not be the all-time five-star classic we would want it to be because both these guys are obviously past their prime. Again, you could have added like stipulation, like no disqualification or something, a lot of bells and whistles. I would probably give the win still to the Undertaker, you know. But yeah, I think it probably would have been better than what we got with Bray Wyatt. No offense to Bray Wyatt, rest in peace is also one of my favorites, but I think they just should have went with Sting versus the Undertaker. And again, for like the third time in this video, sometimes the obvious choice is the best one to go with. It's right freaking there. Why didn't you do it? But hey, I'm not booking this because if I was, trust me, it probably would have been a lot better. And then the main event, the WWE title, Brock Lesnar versus the winner of that year's Royal Rumble, Daniel Bryan. Of course, everyone would be worried, okay, will Daniel Bryan survive Suplex City with his neck issues and everything? Would be able to overcome the Beast. Of course, they had pretty much the match they had at Survivor Series a couple years later will be the match they have here. Of course, the only difference, Daniel Bryan was the baby face. I think personally, I would still keep the Seth Rollins cash in. Will give Daniel Bryan just this close to getting close to being Brock Lesnar, and that's when Seth Rollins enters, cashes in the Money in the Bank, pins Daniel Bryan to win the title. Of course, this would lead to Brock Lesnar getting upset because he didn't get pinned to lose the title. That could pretty much do what they pretty much did in real life, where he like F5 Michael Cole or something. He got suspended. And this will, of course, lead to a feud between Seth Rollins as WWE Champion and Daniel Bryan, which I believe would pulled off some really good matches between the two, leading into the summer. So yeah, so there you have it. That's what I would have booked for WrestleMania 31. Pretty much like 3 or 4 extra matches than what we really got. Um, what do you think? What did you like? Did you like what we got? Did you like what I had to offer? Which was better? What would you have done differently? Um, did you prefer what we got? Would you have changed anything? Like, how would you have booked WrestleMania 31 if you could? Yeah. So again, my allergies are kicking my ass because it's the changing of the seasons again. So again, excuse me if I didn't pause it the way I thought it was, and I was sneezing all over the place. Excuse me. So yeah, so that's it for this week. I'll see you next Sunday for our next WrestleMania. We're like pretty much 10 away from being caught up in real time. So yeah, until then, feel free to leave your thoughts, your comments in the comments section. I'd love to hear your feedback. So yeah, until then, if you haven't asked me about it, chances are I'm going to talk about it anyway.